I'm Mr. Gigabytes, and welcome to the final installment of our distraction-free device series. Now what we've got here is the desktop of my personal Acer Aspire 1 netbook. It's not the one we built in the last video, but it's really close. This one's just got a little bit more performance so that I can show a few other things. The other netbook is actually being used for a different purpose right now, but maybe you'll see it in a different form on this channel. I really think it's a nifty little netbook, despite having a little less power than I would personally like, but for $30 you can hardly go wrong. Now, before we get too into the software side of having a distraction-free device, there's a couple of things I want to go over. Number one, I've been asked, why do you want a Nerf netbook? Why not just get a lower spec brand new PC? And I say, yes, you can have, that's absolutely an option. You can absolutely go with a lower spec, like an AMD A6, which is a dual core notebook computer. It's a little bigger than some of the laptops that I actually talked about in the previous videos, but it's super capable, and it's also a slower processor. You can also get you can pick up at just about any pawn shop at this point. If you go and look at some of the computers that run Windows 10 that have a little, it says Intel inside. It's just a square blue badge, says Intel, Pentium near the bottom by the touchpad. Those are also usually a dual core. Sometimes they're quad core, but those are also a limited kind of unit. I've also had the question, why a limited computer? Because yeah, you can get a newer limited computer, and pretty cheaply. I just priced an A6 Lenovo off of Amazon for about $186. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. The point of this whole series is distraction free means different things to different people. We're not talking about Ernest Hemingway trying to get away from civilization typing on a typewriter. Not everybody needs that. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody can actually do it that way. I'm one of those people. And so you have to think about the distractions you want to get away from. Distractions like social media, like YouTube, like video games, things that are going to draw you away from the actual process of writing. And that's the whole purpose of this entire series, really. You want a limited computer because the limited computer is going to struggle to do some of the things that you can ask a much more capable computer of doing. And simply by having a separate device that is dedicated to writing, sometimes that's all you need. It doesn't even matter what you're writing on. It could be a Chromebook. It could be anything. Whatever you're writing on, that device, if you dedicate that device to writing, that may be all the distraction free you need. And so this whole series, I've been trying to redefine distraction free for, well, I've been doing it for me, and I've been trying to help others do it for themselves as well. But that's enough talking. Let's get into the software here. So, a couple of things I'm going to go over, and I'm going to, as I go through them, I want you to watch this little meter down here. This is the CPU utilization, and it will tell you how hard the CPU is working while you're trying to run this software. Now, the less hard the CPU has to run, the better your battery's life is going to be, the better, generally, the better the experience is going to be. You know, it's not that having something that uses a lot of CPU, if you use something that uses a lot of CPU, it's not that you're going to get bad results, right? It just means that things are going to be, and especially on a limited computer like a netbook, it's going to take longer to get into the process of actually writing. So as I'm going through the different software and the different things on this computer, just keep an eye on that meter and kind of see for yourself. First of all, let's go ahead and let's talk about backing things up. I do things a little backwards on this computer. So if we open up Home here, and as you can see, the CPU goes up there as we open things up. If we take a look at this, normally what you would do is you'd have a folder on here for writing project, you know, or whatever your current project is. And you would be using this local folder to do your work in. And then you would back up to, say, an SD card, like this one, and just back up the folder to the SD card, and then perhaps also back it up to something like Google Drive or OneDrive, that type of thing. You want at least 3 backups of your writing. If you're not creating at least 3 backups, you could be endangering your progress. You know, because there's always a chance to lose it. So, for example, if I'm just working in the computer locally, and then I'm backing up to a SD card locally, which is great. So now I've got 2 copies of my writing project, but I don't back it up to something that's off-site. You've got to think about, okay, if I'm at a coffee shop writing on my laptop and my laptop gets stolen, for example, well, then what happens? Well, I've lost 2 of my backups. If I don't have a backup in the cloud, I've lost all of that. I've lost any progress that I've made in those 2 backups. Now, like I said, I do this a little bit backwards. I work off of the SD card and then back up to the local computer and then back up to Google Drive, and I'll show you Google Drive in a minute. I think that's pretty self-explanatory when you're talking about using any electronic device to write. And it's not that this problem is unique to technology either. You know, because I've heard some people say, well, then I'll just use a typewriter then, or I'll use a pad and paper. Well, you could lose the pad of paper too. You could drop it, it could get stolen, it could be, you know, the dog could rip up the paper, the dog could eat your homework, essentially. You are in danger of things happening to your work if you don't have a backup. It's just that when you're on a typewriter or when you're or using pad and paper, you know, the backup process is harder because then you'll have to transcribe it to a digital format and then back the digital format up. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about here. So let's go ahead and get into the various software you can use. Now on this, I'm going to focus on Linux because that's what this is. This is Linux, Xubuntu specifically, and you'll see that it's not exactly like Windows, right? It uses a lot of the same software. We can use Firefox, we use Chrome. I'm going to use Chrome, and already after loading it, just on the landing page, we've got the CPU spiking here and there. Let's go ahead and go into Google Drive, and we're pretty much maxing out the CPU on this. And it's taking a long time for Google Drive to load. So when you're dealing with something that's limited, you don't want something that's going to take a lot of CPU to get you moving. If you want to jump right in and start writing. Because I'm still having to wait. Now let's go into Creative. Now it's waiting for client6.google.com. Oh, there we go. All right, there's my writing project folder, and then I can double click on that folder and start bringing things up. I don't want you to conflate my complaints about speed with ineffectiveness. This is a very, very legitimate way to be writing, to be doing things. It's just probably going to require something that's more capable, and anytime you have something that's more capable, you run into the temptation of wanting to install more things, right? You want to install, you want to put YouTube on it, and you want to listen to music while you're writing, and you want to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but maybe while you've got some writer's block, you want to go play a game of Peggle or something, and try to loosen things up. The thing is, that's all distraction. It takes you away from writing. Having a limited PC helps you reduce distraction. Now, once I close out of Chrome, I don't have Chrome running in the background anywhere down here, and so it's not going to pop up notifications. It's not going to nag me for anything. Once I close Chrome, I'm outside of that internet world where I could be lured in by a YouTube video or what have you. So if you're not going to use Google Docs or Google Drive to write, which is perfectly okay, one of the things that's akin to Google Drive or Google Docs is also Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office, say Microsoft Office 365, is on the internet. If you install it locally, it works the same as something like LibreOffice, which I'm going to show you next. Now, Microsoft Office doesn't really run in Linux. There are ways to do it, but that's a whole nother video. LibreOffice Writer, obviously you see it's in my favorites because I use it all the time, because this is my writing machine. But I can also go under Office, and here's my LibreOffice Writer here too. And it takes a few moments, and you'll see the CPU utilization graph. It used a lot less CPU time than Google Docs did. Google Docs is communicating with all kinds of things. Google Drive is communicating with all kinds of things. Docs, Drive, it's all the same thing. It's all internet based. It's communicating with a lot of servers. It's doing a lot of things in the background. When I bring up LibreOffice Writer, it loads, and there's a surge of CPU usage, and now you can see we're pretty much, now that we're at idle, we're maybe 2% more CPU utilization than we were when we had nothing open. So LibreOffice is very efficient, and it's very Microsoft Word-like. Perhaps if you're an older writer, Microsoft Works. Especially with this particular icon theme, it reminds me a little bit of the old school Microsoft Works, but it is as powerful as Microsoft Word. And it's free. You don't have to go out and buy this, which I feel is a huge advantage. Obviously, if you like the program, you want to donate to the LibreOffice group, but it's an optional thing. This is provided for free, and it's a very, very powerful word processor. There is a couple of things that some people have a little difficulty with. So, like under Microsoft Word, if you want to change your page settings, your margins, or anything like that, it would be under File and then Page Setup. Here, it's instead of under File, it's under Format. So it's under Page Style. Now you can change your margins, change the area, transparency, all this other stuff. But yeah, your font styles, which I imagine, you're probably not going to do much with if you're just typing out your first draft. I tend to just start typing. I don't bother with any formatting or anything until I'm well into editing. So that's LibreOffice Writer. Here's the thing with LibreOffice Writer, it shoehorns very well with Google Docs. Google Docs uses the open document format. LibreOffice uses the open document format as well. And so they work very well together. So if you are using Google Docs and you want to use an offline format, LibreOffice is really the way to go. Even as simple as LibreOffice is, there's just too much going on, right? There's these icons all over the place, and there's font that you got to mess with, and this and that. And for some writers, it can be too much. Well, I have a solution for that. And again, this is why I advocate for actually using a computer, because a computer gives you nothing but options. You are not tied to a format or to a way. You're not tied down to a way of doing things like you are with some other limited type things. So this is a program called Tilde. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. This is a command line editor. And for those folks that have used MS-DOS or old versions of, who have been typing things in a command line forever, this might look really familiar. And that's because this is based on Microsoft Edit, which was a DOS program. This runs from the command line. And as you can see, this doesn't take any CPU hardly at all to run. This is all, the nice thing about this is this isn't keyboard controlled. You can certainly control it via the keyboard. It's just a basic text editor. But it is largely mouse driven, very easy to use, very easy to get along with. You still have, open, close, open, save as, exit. You have edit, you have cut, copy, and paste. You have all the basics that you need. Now, for this program, there are a couple of things that I needed to do. If you go into current buffer, one of the things I had to enable was wrap text. This is unchecked by default. And so you have to go into options, current buffer, and buffer defaults. If you want it to wrap the text by default, check it in both places, buffer and buffer defaults. And if we want to use it in full screen and sort of cover everything up, we can go to F11 and go full screen with it. And now it's just you in the text editor. I'm going to go ahead and open an example I did earlier. So media, user, there's my SD card. Go to writing project. There is a tilde test.txt. I just wrote a couple of lines. Now, if we go to, if you do not have that word wrap checked in current buffer and buffer defaults, what'll happen is it'll just create one line all the way across the top until it reaches the character limit of that line. And then it'll move on to the next line. With the word wrap, what'll happen is depending on what size you have of the window. So as you can see, if I go full screen here, this isn't long enough to hit the edge of the screen. But when I go make it smaller, it adjusts that and all the text. And it wraps the word to the next line. And super basic editor, no fonts to dink with. It's just pure text. And if this is the thing you're going for, you could actually, if you wanted to, you could create a laptop that has no GUI interface whatsoever. It would be a lot harder to use, but you could do it. And you would just open up Tilde and it's right there, ready to go. That's really the main ones, the ones that I really like. But you do you, and you do how you want to do it on your distraction-free journey. And until next time, we'll see you in the next one.